Hello and welcome to the first series of Kotak Konversations on GCC Spotlight. This is a series where we are trying to uncover the stories behind global capability centers. There are multiple global companies which need to set up shop or operations in India to achieve savings in their cost or access to better quality manpower. At Kotak we support quite a few GCCs and we will continue to do the same thing going forward. My name is Paritosh Kashyap. I represent Kotak Mahindra Bank. When you talk about GCC enablers, the first name that comes to mind is ANSR. Trusted by leading global brands, ANSR has successfully established over 175 GCCs, more than 180,000 of professionals and more than 12 million square feet of space. Some of the prominent GCCs ANSR has helped set up are Wells Fargo, Target, Bristol Myers, FedEx, etc. among many others. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Smitha Hemmigae, Managing Director at ANSR and a seasoned business leader with over 2 decades of experience across global technology organizations. Join us as we explore the lesser known facts of the GCC industry and what makes this sector such a powerhouse in India's economic growth story. Sit back, tune in and let's get started. So Smitha, welcome again.
Thank you so much for having me here, Pari.
Pleasure. So Smitha, let me start with, most people associate GCCs with cost saving. They come to India, your costs will be reduced. But ANSR has been at the forefront of positioning them as strategic assets. Can you share some lesser known ways GCCs are driving innovation and competitive advantages for enterprises today?
The world of GCCs has constantly evolved. If you have to go back and look at a versioning of the GCC, we would say that the GCCs are right now at version 9.0, which means you've got blurred lines from where the enterprise starts to where the GCC gets set up. It's a microcosm of the enterprise. So think of it. You've got 10 floors in a building. The 9th floor in your office in New York is actually taken and it's kept in Bangalore. And that's how integrated a GCC is with the enterprise. A key driver to why organizations are looking to set up a GCC is because they want access to great talent. And they want to keep what's core and critical to the organization to help grow, create competitive differentiation, move faster on the digital journey, help with their transformation is all done with, very differentiated enterprise-ready talent that's available here in India. And that's the single most reason to why organizations are looking to set up their GCCs. But if I go back and if I look at some trends that we've seen over the years, I think GCCs have become like the digital twins. So which means large parts of that value chain actually being delivered from the center here. You will see that the GCC leaders are also becoming pipeline to global leadership. We see several large CTOs, CIOs, Chief Digital as well as Transformation Officers being based out of India, but driving global roles. Or this could just be functional roles where they're driving that role for across the entire enterprise. And some classic examples are like, for example, if you look at Target, if you look at Lowe's or Maersk, you will see that these are typical companies which have kind of adopted and created gold class organizations or GCCs from here. What we've also seen is the GCCs then become like the innovation engine. You start seeing them engage with the ecosystem, they start working with startups, they work with academia, they work with several enablers to actually help build innovation pipelines that can power innovation back to the enterprise. So in many ways, if we go back and look at the GCC, it's becoming an extension. It's no more an outpost. It's not doing low-end work, which means that we're talking about value arbitrage and value arbitrage in multiple multipliers. You'll know this better being a financial whiz yourself. And looking at what could you actually go back to drive value to the organization. And that's the fundamental reason to what organizations look for when they come and set up a GCC here.
So Smitha, is availability of skilled labor the primary driver and cost is a incidental benefit for the GCCs?
Absolutely, you got it spot on. We're talking about cost becoming table stakes and hygiene, but we're talking about what could be great value that could be delivered from the GCC, especially with investments that are being made in leading digital technologies like AI, ML, blockchain, cybersecurity, all of these digital first technologies actually being delivered from from the GCC back to the enterprise.
And typically this is when we talk about talent, this is at the entry level or at various multiple levels?
So the GCCs typically don't hire freshers in their first few years. So they hire lateral talent. So the junior most person in the GCC career pathing journey has about 2 to 3 years of experience. But a bulk of the hiring happens between the 5 to 8 year segment that we're looking at. So which means highly specialized lateral talent that can be operational from day one, and they can start delivering whatever role or transformation or developing capability in new areas that can truly help the enterprise on their journey.
So tell me, there is a lot of talk about tier 2, tier 3 cities, and now there is enough and more manpower available, good quality manpower available in those cities, but they do not want to come to Bombay, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, etc., and they would prefer to work from there. So the GCCs that you are helping set up, do they believe in work from home, or they want people to come to office and work?
Great question. I think the best of the GCCs are yet to come. So if you go back and look at the Fortune 500 list, there's only 23% of them who have their presence here in India. And with this huge influx that's due to come here to our country, there is going to be a point where we need to be looking at beyond these big hubs. So can we look at a hub plus one strategy, which means can we look at some part of the team being set up in the key cities hub, and then can we look at some of the emerging cities that are across the world? It could be Vizag, Amravati, Indore, Bhopal, it could be Greater Noida, or it could be parts of Lucknow, which could be then looked at as emerging cities network, which we can then work with building certain capabilities in that region using local universities or skilling agencies that can help the lateral as well as fresh graduates to build capability in areas like AI, could be cyber security, it could be quantum engineering, it could be in the areas of blockchain, it could be in the areas of AR, VR, which are emerging skills and which can be developed in newer areas as well. And then they become the talent magnets in that region, which can then lead to enterprises looking at this. Another way to also look at the emerging cities is we've got a new segment which is the mid-market, which means companies that are not part of the Fortune 500 or the Forbes Global 2000 list, but typically are anywhere from a 500 million in terms of annual revenue up to about $2 billion. Now, these companies usually set up micro and nano GCCs. And for them, at times, cost can also be a driver. So the emerging cities then give you a combination of cost as well as access to talent, which can then be a win-win proposition for them as well.
My question, Smitha, was in context of GCCs. Do they allow people work from home? Do they allow people to work from outside the city? For instance, GCC is set up in Bangalore. Will they allow people to work from Indore, Lucknow, Kanpur, where there are talent available?
I think most GCCs adopt a hybrid strategy because they want to give that flexibility back to the employee. But they would like the employees to be back in the office 2 to 3 times in a week, because teams need to come together to collaborate, to innovate. Also, the role of the office has evolved after pandemic. The role of the office is more for a lot of ideation, a lot of collaboration, innovation that helps companies kind of get their teams together and start working towards that one common goal or one common war theme that they are, working towards. And that will only happen when teams come together and work together. So while we did see at the start, when after the pandemic, at the start of maybe 24, late 23, where teams were still being heavily distributed, we start seeing that people are now coming back to the office 2 to 3 times a week.
You mentioned that only after the Fortune 500 companies, only 23% of them have set up GCCs in India, and there's a lot to do. So as at Kotak, we are extremely keen to build this, and I'm hopeful that out of the balance 77%, a lot more of them will be doing business with Kotak. So kindly keep pushing for Kotak when you talk to GCCs.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me go to my next question. What is the common misconception about GCCs that you would like to debunk?
I think the first thing is people thinking about tasks and they're not talking about capabilities in the market. So which means the first question or the area that we discussed a while back about capabilities versus capacity, right? Many times people are thinking, should we just build teams and not really thinking about what capability I'm building. You're building ones and twos across several units and it's not really adding incremental value. But can you then go back to think about, can we build capabilities across a few areas so that you start delivering value and you're accountable for that value? Because most well-run GCCs, the KRAs or the KPIs or the OKRs that they have to go back to meet are what has been set at the global level for the organization. They do not create India level OKRs or KPIs because India is part of the enterprise and it's just another geography where they've come and they've set up an office.
So I think the ninth floor shifted to India.
Yeah, the ninth floor is shifted to India. Absolutely. Yes. And this cross-functional fluency that you get to see of having business, technology and corporate functions being based out of the center here creates this unique ecosystem that helps drive synergies across the organization, gives them a sense of what the business does, and they're able to drive a lot of value. So I think that's the first myth that I'd like to debunk. And I think the second one that I'd like to debunk is a lot of noise that we're hearing about agentic AI. That agentic AI will come, it's going to take away jobs, it's going to be a huge disruptor in the market. Agentic AI cannot be implemented if you don't have the foundational systems in place. So which means enterprises need to start building those foundational systems. Some of those foundational systems might be built by their teams back here in India too, or anywhere else that they have global talent hubs that they've set up their centers. And these teams integrate their the systems that they've bought, the new systems that they're building, as well as the homegrown systems that they've had over a period of time, so that the silos can be broken down. The systems are talking to each other. There is data that is then flowing across, which is seamless, and you've got one view. You also identify what kind of data that you want to be retaining, and based on that, then when you add agentic, it becomes a value enabler. It becomes that enabler that can truly help you drive and make intelligence decisions while having human oversight. So many times they think that the India Center will have this magic wand and they can just wave it, but unless you've got the foundational aspects right, some of these emerging cool technologies that you get to see in the market may not really give you that expected outcomes, because the system of action is not ready to make to kind of come back and give you that value.
One thing I'm very clear about, AI can't replace the podcast that we're doing. Let me come to the question. You talked about larger GCCs, medium-sized GCCs, smaller and NO GCCs. What is the ideal number of employees that, if you look at which is most cost effective?
I don't think there is any size that you have to have as a sample size or an ideal size. The GCC model has actually debunked that entire notion. I think there are two things that it has done. One is it's size agnostic. So which means you can have a 10-member GCC and it can go all the way to maybe 50,000, 60,000, depending on the kind of functions that you want to have here. But typically what we've seen after a 5 or 8 year growth and ensuring that it's got like all functions of the enterprise represented here, they will be anywhere from a 5 to 6,000, and they usually hit, and that's their stable state after that. So you don't see GCCs hiring in tens and thousands of people, because it's your team. Like in Kotak, you will only hire people who are critical to your business. You're not going to be hiring everybody that you can bring in-house, because you also work with partners, you also work with the larger ecosystem, but you only hire people who are core and critical to what you do as a bank. So similarly, the GCCs or the enterprise only hires people that is core and critical. So you'll always see, them being highly impactful but smaller in number when compared to the typical IT services industry, which is much larger. So GCCs can be 10, 20 member, very specialists, creating and maybe even sending the next rocket to space, to looking at, can I have large parts of my enterprise being represented here, and I would like to bring that piece of work in-house and I'd like my teams to deliver that. Then you have larger size teams.
Okay, one follow-on question on when GCCs employ people in India, are these engineers, these are chartered accountants, these are any other specialized qualification? Is there any, do you see any trend?
It's very interesting what you've asked me. So if I go back and look at like a typical split, usually I see a 60-40 split or a 70-30 split between, technology and the other split comprising of both the business functions as well as, your corporate functions. So let's take a retailer, for example. Typically, you'll have everything to do with their technology, which is enterprise architecture, managing their IT infrastructure, point of sale systems, digital infrastructure that you need, new systems and products that you're building, automation and bots that you're building in-house. All of that is part of the technology teams. If you look at the business functions, then it's typically merchandising, supply chain, marketing, digital, which is, your marketplace and optimization of, your .com and all of that sits under digital. And then you've got corporate functions like your finance and accounting, as well as HR shared services, legal, administration. All of that is what sits inside a retail GCC. Now, this split could be anywhere between 60-40 or it could be a 70-30 depending on the nature of work that we are getting to see from the enterprise. Now, the typical composition, if thinking about tech, will be, of course, the various tech roles that you will have within the organization. But because you're having things like store management or store design, for example, that means you need to have an architect on board. If you're looking at having F&A functions, corporate functions, you will have CAs and, your company secretaries and all of that as part of that function. Multifunction. You will have, and if you're looking at legal as a shared service, then you'll have several legal lawyers being part of your organization. So it's a combination of multiple, people who are within a workforce, and it doesn't just have to be technology alone. Tomorrow, if you're looking at, like, I remember we've signed a client who's now building the next cockpit of the future of one of their premium cars, which they look to launch in 2028. And they have mechanical engineers, they have mechatronics folks, and then they have people who have understanding of electronics. So it's and embedded, because it's a combination of what will go into the electronics as well as the mechanical operations of the cockpit of a car. So it becomes, extremely a well-knit team that needs to go back to deliver that. So we've seen that the nature of the kind of roles that we are having is also changing as the kind of work that's coming to the center.
So Smitha, that takes me to the next question. What are the unexpected roadblocks that GCCs face while setting up a base in India? Something that may not be finding place in the press release, but you may want to talk about it.
Okay, so if an enterprise is looking to come on their own to India without a partner, then typically there are about 100 odd, partners or services that they need to take. It could be right from, building the business case to thinking about legal entity, finance entity, banking service, and then thinking about incubation space and then permanent workspace. But in parallel, work with, how could I go back to look at the org model? What should my, people strategy look like? How will career pathing look like? How will the hierarchy matrix system look like? And then I don't have any brand in the market. So I need to be building an employer brand that's very specific to the talent market that I want to go back and attract. And then how do I hire the right kind of talent to bring them on board? And where do I house them? Because you need to house them in a permanent place after a period in time. And then you need a whole host of financial, like all your accounting, payrolling, and then you have HR shared services that you require as part of HR, business partnering, in terms of a portal where, your employees can go back and ask about their HR queries, policies, and all of that. And then of course, your food, cafeteria, cab, and all of this put together. And you need somebody to also help you, work with you to also look at what should be your adjacent next set of capabilities that needs to come back to the center. Now, this can be daunting to somebody who's looking to do this on their own. And this could also mean that you're looking at investing a significant capex in the country, which could also be conversations that you need to take at the board level. Now, this is fairly, difficult, or, it's not the easy path for enterprises when they do this on their own. Trying to work with 100 partners when you're coming to India or to set this up for the first time. I think the second is the question that we get to hear most commonly in the boardrooms is, I don't have a brand, will I be able to hire? Because everyone's fighting for the right talent, and you're looking at the top maybe 5-10 percentile of that top talent. How will you attract? More importantly, how will you retain? Because I think that becomes critical. And then how do you go back and have a talent strategy at scale who knows where the enterprise talent pools are and who can help you attract and hire that talent pool through the talent acquisition service? These are typically like the questions that we get to hear, in conversations and what's the value? Can we have a quantifiable value that we can go back and deliver at the end of a significant period of time, which can be tied back to your business case, so that you're able to go back and deliver value.
So you're trying to say they need a partner and no one better than ANSR.
ANSR's done this about 175 times. We've got a playbook that is fairly successful and repeatable, which ensures that you have success at every milestone that we go back and deliver. We've got the right kind of ecosystem in place. We understand that entire life cycle because we've helped set up and run these centers, and which is what makes us very unique in this market when we engage with our customers.
Same is the case with Kotak Bank. We have multiple GCC partners with us. We provide them multiple services on their transaction banking, employee banking, remittances, digital solutions for their banking needs. So no better than Kotak.
It seems like two brands who are leaders in their space talking to each other.
So Smitha, where do you see GCCs heading in next 5 years?
So Pari, we spoke about how the best is yet to come, right? And I think we are at the start of that whole hockey stick growth that we're getting to see. And I think some trends or a view that we see, which will be fairly significant, is that entire, no difference between what the GCC is and the enterprise. I think that will become a lot more prominent. We will see, enterprises or organizations which of different revenue sizes actually adopting this model, and this model becoming fairly mainstream in the market. It's going to be a key part of what we call the national agenda. If you go back and look at the Viksit Bharat 2047, GCCs are a key mandate. And if you look at Make in India, I think you can't get a better example than what GCCs do, because they're building, for the world, from India to the world. And these centers with high quality talent, which is being built at scale, which is focusing on capability, is constantly going to be finding new ways that will help these enterprises who've used this opportunity to build these teams here to constantly evolve and to constantly, reach new heights that will create, the best of the industry and the economy to come. So I think we've got a great impact on the global economy. We've got, or a tremendous impact on the global economy, because large parts of our talent actually drives very large ecosystems or organizations worldwide. And that is something that as each person in this country, we have to be really proud that we were able to, build and scale this entire model that's helped us do this. And I also see that it's going to be a new segment that will exist. So in the Indian IT industry, we will have service providers, we will have product companies, but we'll have a really key, significant, differentiated segment, and that segment is going to be called the GCC industry.
Tell me, what does India need to do to stay on top of its game in this segment?
I think we are talking about this industry kind of growing to about 14% in FY25, and it's expected to reach about 4.5% of India's GDP. And I think we've got the right kind of incentives. If you see centrally, we've got a lot of buy-in from our government back at the center. During the last budget, our Honorable Finance Minister, in fact, made an announcement of wanting to create a framework that will help build, a blueprint for emerging cities to create them as, preferred GCC hubs. We are also working with several state governments which have established hubs as well as emerging hubs, which have policies, incentives in place, which becomes great ways to attract and grow these centers in those regions. We've also seen that, beyond all of these hubs, these centers now become new places that we can go back and set up and engage. And of course, I think there's a lot of investment that is being done on creating world-class infrastructure, as well as access to creating startup ecosystems, as well as R&D with academia, or incubation hubs, which is all coming together, which kind of fuels the growth for the GCCs.
Thank you, Smitha. It was really an insightful conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks, Pari. Thanks for having me here. It's been a great conversation on GCCs with you and being part of this show.
Thank you. To our listeners, thank you for watching this episode. We will continue to bring more episodes for your benefit about GCCs in India, the challenges, the opportunities, and what lies ahead. Please follow our social channels and give feedback on #Kotak Konversations. This is Paritosh Kashyap signing off. Thank you.